Hello and welcome to Eve May's Poetry Corner. Lovely to have you with me today. So we're still hearing about all sorts of horrible things that's going on across the pond with our brothers and sisters in America. And we're learning, aren't we, that the messages of people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, fabulous writers like James Baldwin, their messages are as valid today and resonate with us today as much as they did then. And that is really sad. It set me thinking, about our own struggles right here in the UK, our Windrush generation, and how they struggled and fought so that we, our generation, could enjoy a better, not the best, but a better life than what they had, and that we could be afforded better opportunities than what they had. And I did a little bit of research, so I thought today let's do a bit of a comparison between the USA and the UK in the same sort of period. And in my research, I came across something called the Bristol Bus Boycott. Yeah, there was a bus boycott in Bristol, just like there was in Selma. So I thought I'd read you the account of the background, why it happened, and the resolution. All right, so are you ready? Okay. The Bristol Bus Boycott of 1963 arose from the refusal of the Bristol Omnibus Company to employ black or Asian bus crews in the city of Bristol. In common with other British cities at the time, there was widespread racial discrimination in housing and employment against coloureds. Bristol in the early 1960s had an estimated 3,000 residents of West Indian origin, some of whom had served in the British military during the Second World War, and some who had emigrated to the UK more recently. Now, a large number of the West Indians living in the area suffered discrimination in housing and employment, and some actually encountered violence from teddy boy gangs of white youths. As a result, the community set up their own churches and associations, including the West Indian Association, which began to act as a representative body. One of their foremost grievances was the colour bar operated by the Bristol Omnibus Company, which had been a nationalised company owned by the UK government since 1950 and operated through the Transport Holding Company. Although there was a reported labour shortage on the buses, black prospective employees were refused jobs as bus crews. There were other employment open to them in lower paid positions in workshops and in the canteens. The Bristol Evening Post and the Daily Western Press ran a series on the colour bar, which was blamed by the company management on the Transport and General Workers Union, that's the TGWU, which represented bus workers. Local union officials denied that there was any colour bar, but in 1955, the passenger group of the TGWU passed a resolution that coloured workers should not be employed as bus crews. Andrew Hake, curator of the Bristol Industrial Mission, recalled that the TGWU in the city had said that if one black man steps on the platform as a conductor, every wheel will stop. Some white conductresses, who says that today? Conductresses expressed concern for their safety if they were crewed with black men. Oh dear. Other bus workers' concerns was that a new competitive source of labour could reduce their earnings because pay was low and workers relied on overtime to get a good wage. An action group called the West Indian Development Council was founded by Roy Hackett, Owen Henry, Audley Evans and Prince Brown, with a Worth Euchre, Paul Stevenson as their spokesperson because they were unhappy with the lack of progress in fighting discrimination by the West Indian Association. Stevenson set up a test case to prove the colour bar existed by arranging an interview with the bus company for Guy Bailey, a young warehouseman and Boys Brigade officer. When Stevenson told the company that Bailey was West Indian, the interview was cancelled. Inspired by the Montgomery bus boycott in the United States in 1955, the activists decided on a bus boycott in Bristol. They announced their action at a press conference on the 29th of April 1963. The following day, they claimed that none of the city's West Indians were using the buses and that many white people supported them. In an editorial, the Bristol Evening Post pointed out that the TGWU opposed the apartheid system in South Africa and asked what trade union leaders were going to do to counteract racism in their own ranks. When reporters questioned the bus company about the boycott, the general manager Ian Patey said, "The advent of coloured crews would mean a gradual falling off of white staff. It is true that London Transport employ a large number of coloured staff. They even have recruiting offices in Jamaica, and they subsidise the fares to Britain of their new coloured employees. As a result of this, the amount of white labour dwindles steadily on the London Underground. You won't get a white man in London to admit it, but which of them will join a service where they may find themselves working under a coloured foreman? I understand that in London, coloured men have become arrogant and rude after they have been employed for some months." The local branch of the TGWU refused to meet with a delegation from the West Indian Development Council, and an increasingly bitter war of words was fought out in the local media. It condemned Stevenson for causing potential harm to the city's Black and Asian population. Someone called Nethercott launched an attack on Stevenson in the Daily Herald newspaper, calling him dishonest and irresponsible. This led to a libel case in the High Court, which awarded Stevenson damages and costs in December 1963. The resolution. The Union, the City Labour Establishment, and the Bishop of Bristol, Oliver Stratford Tompkins, ignored Stevenson and tried to work with Bill Smith of the TGWU to resolve the dispute. Leary Constantine continued with his support for the campaign, meeting with the Lord Mayor of Bristol and Frank Cousins, leader of the Transport and General Workers Union. He went to the Bristol Omnibus Company's parent, the Transport Holding Company, and persuaded them to send officials to talk with the union. The company chairman told Constantine that racial discrimination was not company policy. Negotiations between the bus company and the union continued for several months until a mass meeting of 500 bus workers agreed on the 27th of August to end the colour bar. On the 28th of August 1963, Ian Patey announced that there would be no more discrimination in employing bus crews. On the 17th of September, Ragbir Singh, a Sikh, became Bristol's first non-white bus conductor. A few days later, 2 Jamaicans and 2 Pakistani men joined him. The boycott of the company's buses by Bristolians lasted for 4 months until the company backed down and overturned their discriminative colour bar policy. Isn't that fantastic? Yes! See what we can achieve when we work together. I was so inspired when I read this story. I hope you enjoyed it and, like me, learned something about how feisty our forefathers were when they came to the UK. Great. See you for our next story. Bye.